Hey everybody, Rob Hogue here, Bass Talking Fishing. Today I wanted to do a video on winter bass fishing. It's gonna be a little bit longer video, but it's gonna have a lot of good information for both the beginners and the more experienced people. We'll go over a little bit about just the bass in general and how they act this time of year. Also, your baits, your locations, the weather, and the effect the weather has on the fish. Um, One of the good things about bass fishing in the winter is that you can eliminate huge amounts of water before you even get on your boat. It's not like other times of the year when you have deep bass, you have shallow bass, and you have bass pretty much everywhere in between. Um, all the bass in the winter are going to be relatively deep. But another good thing is they all bunch up into certain type of areas that they like to relate to in the winter. And and knowing this, you're really going to be able to pinpoint these key areas on the lake before you even get out there. Uh, but one thing you need to remember, I'm from the northern part of the country, so some of this stuff might be a little different. Most of it should be similar, but it might not be as drastic if you're fishing in an area where the water doesn't get as cold. Um, but I'm gonna tell you, winter can be tough. But some of the biggest fish caught all year are gonna be caught right now. So that should be some incentive for you to get out there. Um, One thing is bass don't eat a lot in the winter. Um, and this is something that makes it tough. They don't eat a lot, they don't move a lot, and because they're cold-blooded and they're in cold water, they don't move very fast. Um, but they are still catchable. You just need to make some adjustments, and you really need to slow down your presentation. And I mean, you really need to slow down. A lot of your presentations are going to be moving the bait an inch or two on the bottom, followed by really long pauses. And that's different for people who don't normally fish this time of year, and it's hard for them to kind of get used to it. So you really have to be patient when you're fishing in the winter. But first things first, let's talk about the bass. Like I said earlier, they don't eat a lot, and this is because of the cold water. And when they're in the cold water, they can't digest as much food. They can't process as much food, and less food means less calories, which equals less energy. Um, so they don't move a lot because they're conserving their energy. So, and believe it or not, these things play a major role in where the fish like to be located and how they like to position themselves. Um, and we'll talk about the positioning and all that later on. But so we'll kind of get into the baits. Obviously, there's going to be more baits and more presentations that will work in the winter, but I'm just trying to give you guys what I feel gives you the best chance of putting fish in the boat during the winter. There's going to be different lists out there, but this is just from my experience. These baits are going to give you your best chance of putting fish in the boat on any given day. My first bait, and this is one I'm always going to have tied on in the winter, and it's a football head jig. But in the winter, I use a little bit smaller football head jigs than I would use in the summer or the spring or whatever. I like to stick to a half ounce or less. I like the smaller profile. And I'm also not going to use trailers that have a lot of action. I'm going to use chunk trailers that aren't going to overdo it in the winter for action wise. But remember, very slow retrieve. I'm moving this bait maybe 1 or 2 or 3 inches, and then I'm letting it sit for an extended period of time, and then maybe I'll move it another inch or two, and then I'm going to let it sit again. But another thing you need to know about fishing in the winter, if you're imitating a crayfish or a crawfish, or however you say it, is you want to stay away from the blues, the oranges, the chartreuses, the trailers and the jigs with a lot of colorful flake in it. And the reason for this is because in the winter, especially I know for certain up north, but in the winter, these crawfish don't have a lot of those colorful tints to them like they do in the spring, in the summer, and the fall. So you kind of want to stay away from that. Brown and black are really the only colored football head jigs you're going to need in the winter. Other baits I like to use are drop shots because they're super slow moving. It gives the fish plenty of time to decide that, hey, this is going to be an easy meal, I'm going to go for it. Suspended jerk baits, your hard jerk baits, your plastic, your soft jerk baits, the plastic ones. Also weightless stick worms, like I did a review on the Zoom Fluke stick. But I like, when I fish stick worms in the winter, I like no weight because that rate of fall is going to be so much slower. It really makes it look like it's an easy target for the fish. But these are the baits that I feel give you the best chance of putting fish in the boat on any given day. Now I want to get into your locations. Winter bass are generally going to hold to any vertical cover, vertical structure, or anything like that. And what I mean by that is anything they can move up and down, as opposed to moving horizontally or swimming a long ways. The places I'm talking about, you're going to look for vertical banks or bluffs, the steep edge of a river channel, main river channel. And normally in the winter, you're going to find the bass on the main river channel. But sometimes you'll find them on the smaller creek channels, but you're going to want to check the steeper side of that channel. But also submerged stumps, submerged trees that are in deeper water. And also your the outer pylons of your docks. And you want to look for docks, obviously, that do come out into deeper water. The reason the bass like these spots is, like I said earlier, they don't like to move a lot. So with these areas, and this is the one thing all these areas have in common, it allows the bass to change depths easily without having to swim very far. They can just move vertically as opposed to swim from the first break up to the bank. They can do this really easily. They're not expending a lot of energy, and like we said earlier, it's a calories game. They're trying to conserve, but they're still going to chase that warmer water. And really, this is what makes them change depths. It is the weather, and this brings us perfectly into our next topic, and that is the weather. Like I just said, they're always going to look for that warmer water. So if you look at the weather and you see you have 3 or 4 warm days leading up to the day you're going to go fishing, you're going to have to look for those bass at a different depth. They still might be sitting in 20 feet of water, but they're going to be suspended way off the bottom towards the tops of those stumps, or higher on that bluff, or higher on those bridge pylons or your dock pylons. So your target area for the fish, the depth you want to be fishing, is going to change. But that's why it's so important to check the weather. If you know you're fishing on a Friday, you want to check the weather for the whole week so that you know where you need to locate these fish, or what depths these fish are going to be located, so you can put your bait in productive water sooner and more often, and that's going to give you a better opportunity to catch more fish. And that's the biggest thing in the winter, because not all these fish are feeding at the same time. But the good thing is here is the groups are so large. If you're fishing productive water at the right depth with the right kind of baits, your chances of running into those fish that are feeding are going to go way up. So that you definitely put yourself in a better position to catch a couple fish. Now the last thing I want to talk about and honestly, I feel it's just as important as what bait you're throwing or at what depth you're fishing, and it's your clothing. Um, you have to be wearing the right clothing out there in the winter. You don't want to be you need to stay warm. You don't want to be out there freezing your butt off. And if you're out there and all you can think about is how cold you are, then you're not focusing on fishing. And when you're not focused on fishing, that's your technique's going to suffer. Maybe you know you're fishing too fast and you're not realizing it because you're just thinking about how cold you are, or you don't detect those light bites that sometimes you get in the winter, and you miss it causes you to miss a fish. And trust me when I tell you, miss fish in the winter hurt a lot more than miss fish any other time of the year, because you are uncomfortable because it is cold. So when you finally do hook up with one of those fish and you miss they definitely hurt a lot more. But in closing, I just wanna tell you, although it is tough fishing in the winter and the fishing is a lot harder, um, it's very rewarding. And I almost think it's more rewarding than fishing any other time of year. Obviously, pre-spawn, everybody's going to catch fish, or in the fall, everyone is going to be catching fish. But catching fish in the winter, it's definitely more rewarding. And honestly, I feel it makes you a better angler, um, because it really prepares you for those tough days at other times at other points of the year. It makes you slow down. It really makes you fish a technique and stay focused on that technique, and it really helps you for those tough days in the summer when it's hot and the bass are heavily pressured. It really prepares you really well for those days. Um, but I hope this helps everybody catch some fish this winter. And if you're going out this winter and you catch some good ones, go to my Facebook page, Bass Stalker Fishing on Facebook, and post them to my timeline. I'd love to see some of your catches this winter. Hopefully you guys catch some big ones. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. Tell a friend, tell a relative that you know likes fishing. I appreciate all the subscribers out there. But I'll talk to you guys later. Maybe I'll do a video on how to break down your reel and clean it up. So we'll talk to you later, guys. Thanks.